wasn't sure there was going to be a sparring match agreement that will spar for a while. I wasn't sure. I was honest about it. That's why he said it's going to go rounds. I wasn't sure if there was an understanding that, we'll play a little bit and then we'll get a little more and, whatever. So that was part of it.
Acknowledge Jake has had double jaw surgery, 4 plates, 8 screws in his face, and everybody is just kind of breezing past that like it's no big deal. But I'm looking further into this because that's no easy surgery, and I'm starting to ask the question, is this the beginning of the end of Jake Paul's boxing career?
As his brother, I was just shocked. I'm in the hospital with the guy, and he's like, yo, can you make this TikTok? Can you film this for me? He's like laughing and having a good time.
Does not have any agenda against Anthony Joshua, because it feels to me like that fight, I before the fight, I was refusing to accept the principle.
The boxing world has erupted, saying that Anthony Joshua should be arrested for hurting Jake Paul in the ring. Experts are furious with AJ as Jake suffered severe injuries, including jaw fractures that required surgery and screws. They criticize a mismatch, saying Joshua's power and aggression went beyond what was safe. The fight left fans and pros alike shocked at the level of damage inflicted, sparking debates on fighter safety and proper matchmaking in high-profile bouts.
Away from the power, you could call it running, and you'll be right. You can also say it's smart for a guy Jake's size and understanding that AJ is a fucking monster. It's also smart to fight that way. It's not the most aesthetically pleased.
Analyst Brian Campbell and Shaka Majwi provided a detailed breakdown of Jake Paul's recent fight against Anthony Joshua, focusing on both the strategy and the physical toll the bout took on Paul. They noted that Joshua's power caused significant damage, including serious blows that ultimately required Jake to undergo jaw surgery. To cope, Paul relied heavily on mobility and evasive maneuvers, constantly circling the ring to avoid being trapped against the ropes. While this defensive approach wasn't aggressive, it allowed him to survive more rounds than many expected against such a formidable opponent. Campbell and Majwi highlighted that Paul's focus on movement and ring awareness helped preserve his stamina and reduce some of the damage. But Joshua's overwhelming strength still inflicted visible injuries. The analysts emphasized that Paul's tactics showcase the importance of defensive planning in boxing, while also underscoring the risks when fighters face mismatched opponents in high-stakes bouts.
For him in terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a 2-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul. And we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there. There's the Tommy Fury rematch. There is ways for Jake Paul to...
Former UFC champion Michael Bisping reacted strongly to Jake Paul's crushing defeat against Anthony Joshua, describing it as a masterclass in professional boxing. He highlighted how completely outmatched Paul was, emphasizing precision and power behind Joshua's punches. AJ's combinations and uppercuts left Paul with virtually no room to move, exposing weaknesses in both his defense and strategy. Bisping pointed out that the broken jaw and repeated punishment Paul endured were a result of facing a much bigger, stronger, and more skilled opponent, something Paul had never encountered at this level. He noted that Paul's bravado and promotional hype couldn't prepare him for the technical and physical realities of fighting an elite heavyweight. While Paul survived the rounds, the damage and domination by Joshua underscored a gap between professional elite fighters and celebrity crossover boxers. Bisping concluded that the fight was a stark lesson in respect, preparation, and skill in the sport.
My humble opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? Yeah, a lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots. And anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing. It's not MMA, as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much, much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round, he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, then a glancing right hook. He goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live. There was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough to...
After the blockbuster fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, both fighters were reported to earn around $92 million each, making it one of the highest-paying bouts in boxing history streamed globally on Netflix. However, Joshua's payday faced a massive hit due to taxes. Being a UK resident, fighting in the United States, he is subject to both U.S. federal taxes and UK international tax obligations, which would take roughly $66 million from his earnings. This leaves his actual take-home pay much lower than the headline figure suggested. In contrast, Jake Paul, as a U.S.-based fighter, does not face the additional UK tax burden, allowing him to keep a larger portion of his earnings despite not winning the fight. The situation highlights how taxation can drastically affect high-profile international boxing purses and serves as a reminder that reported earnings often differ significantly from the money fighters actually receive.
Has to pay, as you see here, a whopping $43 million. $43 million of his $92 million purse. That means Anthony Joshua was left with $49 million. Right? Now, he also has to pay, I believe, 10% of that to his promoter, Matchroom CEO and promoter.